Please use the Q&A and chat section in terms of asking queries. We'll take the questions at the end. We'll make it more interactive. So I'll start, and good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session on highly relevant and crucial topic, which is leveraging privacy preserving technologies and financial services. As we navigate the digital age, and privacy and security has become a cornerstone of trust in the financial sector. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from an expert who is pioneering the advancement in this space. Our speaker, Dr. Jay Prakash, is the co-founder and CEO of Silence Laboratories, a cybersecurity startup that is breaking new ground with a scalable cryptographic infrastructure for privacy preserving computation and authorization. His contribution, particularly in the multi-factor authentication and vulnerability analysis of two-factor solutions, are shaping the future of secure financial transaction. Today, he will be discussing about how these advanced technologies can transform financial services, ensuring that we maintain both trust and security as we continue to innovate. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jay Prakash to share his insight. Uh, so, Jay, over to you.
Thank you very much, Abhishek, and thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, let's begin. We'll try to keep it as much contextual as possible, and yeah, very happy to hear from you all and discuss at the end of the call. So, what we are going to talk today is an approach towards building privacy-preserving internet. And yeah, I'm Jay, as Abhishek told, one of the co-founders of Silence, and we build privacy-preserving computation and authorization infrastructure. So today we will be covering roughly these points: evolution of internet, open finance promises, concerns of different parties in open finance, some survey insights, adaptations we require to handle those concerns, couple of case studies, and a white paper which you will read very soon. Right. But first of all, yeah, we have to be very, very critique when we are trying to develop on top of what we have done. But at the same time, we as a company are very, very appreciative of what Open Finance is doing in particularly. They are building lots of users and building economics incentives. But since we are targeting a much, much bigger picture, we have to be critical and constructive in a constructive way so that we can redesign and build a better future. So please bear with us if there are some things which are harsh. Right. So there's a clear growing story about focus on privacy from different nations and organizations. If you just look around the numbers and the growths across different bills, you will see a drastic rise in the countries which are now having legislations for privacy in past couple of years. And also organizations are now respecting and starting to use privacy enhancing technologies which helps them to meet privacy. And surprisingly, not just for compliance, but also to make more monetization, which we'll talk. But the core crux is yes, there is a sudden influx of privacy, and there's a reason why. So why and why now? So we have data movements around, we have collaborations, we have economics around data for a while since the whole dawn of internet. So why now we are talking about privacy? Something must have gone wrong. So if we start in the at very advent of internet, in 1980s, the internet was read-only era. It means that there were a couple of service providers, and then it was one-way flow of data from the service provider to the consumers. And we consume data, and yeah, we were reading around, we were fetching information from those service providers. What we were not writing inside. 1990s saw a shift, and in this case, there was no digital footprint. But in 1990s, there was a shift where writing also was possible. So what it means that now consumers of these service providing companies can interact, and these interactions lead to huge data footprints. And these are the data we are going to talk about. Either it's fed by us through some forms, or these are results and residuals of our interaction with the web. And further, our interactions also lead to second order degree of interaction, and then these d1 and d1 dash d1 prime can be exchanged by these companies because they are ultimately the custodians of data on our side. on our behalf. So that's where the problem started. And if you just scan around, there have been huge fines across different parts of the world for different companies. And these all fines are actually after consent data has been compromised or misutilized. So the story is, which we believe that consent is a Trojan horse in data economy. It is a very misused tool. After taking consent, which is very, very misleading, companies have found different ways to play around, and that's why they are fined. And that's why the privacy issues now, privacy governance is coming up. So we need a very strict policy for proper data governance. If you look across even the Indian bill, consent is a very, very important topic and important element for it. But the problem in consent currently is it's very complex. It's not easy to read. I don't recall when I read the whole consent form for any app I downloaded from App Store or I used any enterprise software. It's very hard to read and digest. There's a lack of control and flexibility. I can't choose what I want to share, what I want to offer. It's all in or no. It's a binary ecosystem. There's a poor transparency on auditability. What happens with my data after consent has been taken? I have no track. It's just a reactive mechanism where if something bad happens, I will react or the legislation will react. And there's a risk of data misuse as well because of all these fallacies. And if you talk about the enterprise, the problem they face is that the data collaboration is a bit tricky in cross-enterprise sector. Let's see in this example, if there are telecom operator, hospital, and one bank, they want to collaborate. A typical model is they will send data to one trusted party. It can be snowflakes or different data lakes of the world. And then they will be liable for all the compliance. And also, there's no guarantee of deletion of data or data misuse or data copy and all those things. And after all, there's a single point of failure that is if this data gets compromised, like keeps on happening, and even in Indian ecosystem, you might have seen with different IDs, databases which got compromised. So this leads to doubt in the whole ecosystem of data sharing, which ultimately is a loss of monetization and collaboration. So the key takeaway is consent is misutilized, and there's a single point of failure in current data collaboration ecosystem. So to solve all this thing and make whole data collaboration and data economy much more organized, different countries came up with open finance idea, which is a solution to extract optimal value from data. That was the intent. And we have seen open banking in the same domain or even open data. Open banking particularly is something which we'll touch, which is actually something which you all are actually participating in. Account Aggregator is a very nice example for it and quite achieving good success, right? So just to revise, um, the open finance model has three core parties: data custodian, fiduciaries, and data owners, right? At my consent, at users, data owners' consent, you can move data from custodian to the fiduciaries. They will do some query, create insight, and then they will move around with different parties and do business around it. Things are working in this particular context. And there has been huge growth, either market driven, regulatory driven, or there are some more countries coming on board. So there's a good growth happening around. And if you just scan in the countries, UK, India, Brazil, Australia, USA, they all has been leading. And the growth in past couple of years has been quite appreciative. And that's what we are trying to catch on to, right? And just particularly in UK, since the open data and open banking is quite mature, the impact has been very much noticeable. 77% rise in small business owners gaining in immediate or accurate financial insights, 50% reduction in internal and external cost, all because the data movement is now very much organized. And there are more parties from who we can fetch data and then create business out of it. So there's huge value creation happening. But there are challenges. There has been multiple reports if you scan internet or if you read different surveys that open finance has not reached its optimal point yet, and the reason is there's a friction at different points. Data custodians have to maintain infrastructure to support API hits. They have regulatory compliance to meet, and to make matter worse, there is little incentive to return back to the APIs, and there's a lack of trust as well. On data fiduciaries, they are vulnerable to single point of failure because they get all the data. So they have sleepless nights. What if they are compromised? And also there's no auditability on their side. There is no way to verify that they use data for the purpose which user consented. And that's why the consent complexity and the lack of control, poor transparency, and the risk of data misuse, this has not led to sudden hockey stick growth in this whole ecosystem. If we can fix a couple of these things today, then the growth can be enormous and we can open up huge amount of economics around it. So there are three core issues. There's a trust gap between data provider and a data processor. There is the issue of auditability and there are incentives mismatch. You might wonder why we are talking about all this in a privacy discussion. You will know that privacy is not just about compliance, but privacy helps you to meet all these gaps through proper use of tech. So in the trust gap, the path ahead requires a couple of things to be fixed. First is we have to somehow fix that there is zero data visibility to the customers or the processors during analytics, because that's where the data custodians or a bank is concerned about that once I move my data from my premise to somebody else, they have full visibility. I don't know what they are doing. There's a trust gap. Plus, there is a single point of failure, like I told. So we need to fix that. And if we can somehow use a tool to ensure that there's no movement of data actually to the processor, then that's the ultimate fit. That solves the problem, right? So we can do all these things if we can create technologies and maths to compute on encrypted data. So when data moves from the custodian to the consumer, it's encrypted, right? And then they decrypt it and then they do the analytics. But what if we allow computation to happen on encrypted data? Then the doubt of the custodians is completely relaxed, right? What if we do distributed computation? In that case, there will be no single point of failure. What if we don't move data but just move inference? If we can do these three things through different sets of technologies, then we have fixed a very good gap, and that will help in accelerated growth of open finance. That's our belief. And then in auditability domain, we have to fix a couple of things. One is currently there's no verifiable user of data. I can take consent for purpose X. I will use as a processor, I will use data for purpose Y. There is no way to check until audit companies come, they will see my audit log and all those things. There is no proactive measure. There is no verifiable measure to check data uses. There is no enforced consent artifact. All are reactive checks. So, what if we can build technologies and models which will help you to perform verifiable computation? Something if you do something, if you run a function f, you should have a claim and a proof somewhere submitted, and that can't be modified. So there is a cryptographic guarantee that only this thing was done on the data of the customer. And then we have to couple consent and compute. Then we can enforce that only consented processing is happening on data. So if these two things can be done, we'll have complete auditability in the ecosystem. So if we can fix the trust gap and auditability, we achieve a huge milestone for an end-to-end transparent ecosystem. And these are challenges we have to fix as builders in the open finance economy. And another problem is incentive. This is more related to economics, but there are elements of privacy which can help to achieve it. So currently, data custodians are not party in the generated value. They are not party in the growth of the ecosystem directly. So yeah, if we can do some consent to a specific compute and analysis, then we can run API models. We can run economics wherein the charges will be basis compute. So everybody wins, custodians, consumer, and as well as other service providers. And then we will have artifact level telemetry. Then there is much more visibility. The global visibility is quite nice. It's not just fetching data and then I will do whatever I want. There is a global telemetry around which will be better for data governance and also for a sustainable economy around open finance. So these are the three pillars which we have to fix. And just to highlight one important thing which came up actually. So there's a famous paper uh, on non-rivalry and economy of data, which you should definitely read, which talks about a very unique economic characteristics of data. that data is non-rivalry, which means that data can be used by multiple parties simultaneously without depletion. It's a very beautiful feature. And there's an increasing return to a scale. The value of data increases as there are more data being aggregated. So if you have more and more custodians flushing in data in open finance economy, there is a global social optimal which we can reach. And that's what we are after. We have to create tools which encourages these custodians to flush in data and to accept all our API hits. So we are as a company, as a research entity, we have been trying to solve all these things, which we'll talk. But before solving it, we started some surveys around to understand what users are thinking in general fintech space, particularly in India. So we did a survey of around 2,000 respondents of different age and gender. And yeah, we understood that there is a beautiful position in which Indian consumers of finance fintech apps are in. They believe that Indian fintech institutions are communicating terms of data sharing in a very nice way. So almost 80% people feel the communication of data sharing is good by all the apps, but they don't know that they can revoke data. They don't know that there is a frequency of data access and all those things. So it looks like there's a superficial understanding what's happening around, but yeah, people are not empowered and well aware to appreciate what can happen and what cannot happen. And another interesting thing is that there is a comfort of data sharing if there's a value. So 72% people feel that financial institutions collect more data than required. And half of fraction people, respondents mentioned that hacking, theft, and scams are the biggest concern when sharing financial data. But if there's a sufficient benefit, we did observe that people will be willing to share data conditionally if they can see clear benefit, which is required for open finance. So we have to push more and more people inside this funnel who agree to give consent for data utilization, but we need to buy in through proper tech and proper confidence. Uh, and there's a different level of satisfaction, like I told on the previous slide. And the most aware, interesting thing which came up was that the privacy is a bit misinterpreted. People feel the meaning of privacy, they confuse with security, and they feel that if I'm taking consent, then it's my duty to comply with all the consent aspects. So yeah, what we observed was that there is a very interesting consent and privacy linkage between between the consumer's mind. But consent can't be used for a proxy to privacy, but it's being used. That's what we observed in our surveys. So there's a good motivation to fix consent and data uses so that they can be linked and still whole system is transparent. So what is the solution? So the solution is that we need to build cryptographic primitives which can help perform and meet those three requirements: compute and encrypted data, auditability, and then incentives. We can do it if we can ensure that data never moves and consent is bounded to compute. How? So there are technologies which have been evolving in past decade, known as privacy enhancing technologies. There are many, many ways to attain these three bullets: compute and encrypted data, distributed computation, and moment of inference. But particularly MPC, multi-party computation, FHE, fully homomorphic encryption, and GKPs, they have been much, much well researched in past decade. While FHE is much more still in early days, MPC is much more optimal right now, performs as expected from practical constraints. It's a high time we use these technologies so that we can guarantee all these three key elements on the left hand side. And that's what we have been investigating, building around. So let's revisit to understand how we can diminish the trust gap for enhancing the trust in data governance. So this is the current model, the way AI works right now. And this is quite consistent across different geographies as well. The point to be noted here is that when you fetch data as an FIU, you submit a public key during a registration, and then you have a secret key on your side. And whenever you get data, it's encrypted and then you decrypt it. After decryption, you run a function F and then you get the output. But again, the point was there's a single point of failure at FIU, and that is wording point for FIP and even the user. And not just that, FIU can perform other functions as well, not just consented FD. So that's also there. How can we fix it? So the fix is this, which uses a concept called multi-party computation. And that's what uh, we can pause here and yeah, observe what's happening around for a bit. So what's happening here is that now encrypted data comes to this three-party system we call Financial Information Compute Units, FICU. So these three-party are three independent cloud nodes running some libraries which follow privacy guarantees, and this can be run by any enterprise, which is out of discussion, at least for today's talk. But the guarantee which it provides is that once encrypted data comes in, then it gets decrypted in such a manner that the individual FICUs will get sharded data, D1, D2, and D3. So at no point in time, anybody in this network has full data D, which was present with FIU in previously. So what is happening here is that after running a protocol, which is a bit complicated in terms of math, but yeah, if you want to read, yeah, you can read about multi-party computation and some of the things which I will talk about. Using that, we can guarantee that at a state, the data is fetched in a sharded manner. Three parties will have different elements, and neither can do anything if they are just looking at their data. It's a garbage for them. So what's happening actually here is there is a concept called threshold decryption. So you can decrypt data in such a manner using MPC that yeah, they are not they are not exposing complete raw data in one place. So there is an element of distribution here, and this function of sharding is actually happening on encrypted data. So you are meeting the first requirement as well, which we talked about, compute on encrypted data and distribution. So that's happening here. So how will it fit the current model without changing any specifications? That's something which we have to achieve, right? So if you remember the specs of current data fetching, there is a step where you fetch data and then you register your public key through AA to FIP. And that's where the protocol starts. So you do a distributed key generation, which generates independent keys SK1, SK2, and SK3 at these FICUs, and the corresponding public is sent uh, to the FIP. So after the end of DKG, all the parties have SK1, SK2, and SK3 respectively. Now, when you get data, then you get encrypted data, and then you use this SK1, SK2, and SK3 to decrypt it in a sharded fashion, and then you get D1, D2, and D3. And afterward, then you can run any distributed function. You want to run, let's say, average balance, then you can run this function, average of balance, which will run a distributed to and fro communication between all three nodes and then return back the output. So you will just get effects. So typically what is happening here is that you can imagine you are building a computer. And for building a computer, all you need is a couple of gates, right? You can build a whole general purpose computer if you have NAND and NOR gates. That's what is happening here. So if you break a typical function calculation into these gates, complex gates, which are privacy preserving in itself, that during computation they don't see at the data. So you break this into circuits, and that circuit actually runs between these ecosystem of three nodes. And at the end, this network just returns an output. Nobody has full visibility of the data, and that's the beauty of the design and using something like this from pets. And so that solves the problem of single point of failure and compute and encrypted data. Now the problem of auditability also comes into picture. So what also is added in the network is that you only allow consented opcode. Opcodes are pre-compiled, optimized libraries for certain functions. It can be designed by TSPs or it can be designed by any partner. And then you just run these consented opcodes, nothing else. So if you have any function which was not consented, it won't just run. So it also establishes that auditability concept, wherein you can guarantee to your data owner that I'm just processing what you gave me permission for. There's if there's a deviation, the cheating party will be identified and the protocol will abort. And that will actually trigger the incentive mechanism which we talked about. So if you see the whole space from a top view, what is happening here is now there's a middle layer of distributed privacy preserving compute layer, which takes user consent, takes function inside, and then returns insights. And all these are possible by building different blocks of privacy, mathematical blocks based on these MPC, FHE, and GKPs. Then you have programmable consent, authorizations, and which can ultimately flush out the value to the other players as well. So ultimately, and now this is how you can target, and we have been targeting in open finance typically. But these technologies are generally equally scalable for any other financial operation as well, which will guarantee that the data provider has a method to monetize data without exposing content. The data subject and data principals can take control of the data, and data fiduciary can provide the guarantees. So all three parties in the ecosystem, they have ultimate equilibrium where the social value of the data can be reached in optimal manner. And if you can guarantee all these things, there'll be more and more data provider coming in the system, which ultimately leads to the exponential growth. And that's what is our duty as a builder. So ultimately, yeah, the core crux is that, yeah, there's a marriage of consent and compute happening here. So that's about in general open finance. But like I told, there are a couple of elements where it's not just open finance. You can build such privacy technologies useful in many other domains of financial use cases. One use case can be sanction list. So let's say we're moving money from one bank in India to a bank in Singapore, right? And in that case, if you have to move this money, then it's the duty of the bank to check if the recipient in Singapore is in the sanction list or not. Currently, they send the name string to a third party data broker. And because of that, they can't send more private information. So there is a friction. But if you can do a secure search, which means that if you can see X is in Y or not without looking at the Y and without leaking X, then you have reached a very good stage where you can provide perfect guarantee and almost zero false positive in your sanctionless monitoring. And these are possible through use of privacy technologies. You can similarly do capital flow management where you want to check a threshold. Different geographies have different laws around how much an account and how much transfer can happen in one shot. So you can do those checks as well. Basically, at a fundamental level, you are converting any mathematical operation to the distributed compute which we talked about as a complex circuit. You can build a data collaboration environment where there are more and more parties. Let's say a bank, one telecom, another fintech company, and they want to run a risk scoring or other monetization opportunities. That's possible, and that's how is happening through currently. You have multiple clean rooms, which we should definitely read about. There are many clean rooms coming up wherein different parties can associate, connect their data, and then clean rooms will ensure that none other party has visibility of their data. And then yeah, you can run different monetization opportunities. It can be AI model or typical proprietary IPs which are running on those financial data or non-financial data. You can build fraud detection network using similar tools. So better credit scoring, finding frauds, AML. So wherever there's a play of network and wherever there is this concept that more the data, more accurate the system is, that you can build in these concepts. You can build a bank statement analyzer, right? So currently, if you use a couple of products, if you upload your bank statement, then certainly the processor or the processing party has visibility of the whole bank statement. But what if you want to, if you are worrying that, okay, my bank statement should not leak information about where I went, what hotel I stayed in, where I had coffee, or where I went around in past month, then yeah, you need a privacy preserving analyzer if you're that sensitive. This can be built using such tools. You can create private data vault, and we have a couple of companies which are working with us as well, where they use data from different sources, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, Flipkart, and they want to ensure that their customer data is not visible even to them, so that they can go and convince to their customer that, okay, give your data in the data vault. We will process and then create insights and then create monetization angle. So yeah, there are beautiful products being built, because now there is a tool which you can go and use to pitch to the data owners that, okay, you can have trust on the network or the ecosystem we are building, and you can share data. We will comply with all the regulations, we will comply with all your expectations. Yeah, and so that's what is happening in general across different verticals in finance. One thing as a future effort which we need to fix is, yeah, add proper UI in consent mechanisms. Particularly, I will have to appreciate here what is happening in India, in which probably is globally one of the most mature open finance ecosystem, particularly the recent introduction of fair use policy. So those things are building more and more confidence on proper usage of consent. So we should build products which uses those fair use policies and create nice consent UI UX that will build more trust for all the parties who are participating. Yeah, that's roughly what I have to say. We are very, very open to collaborate. If anybody has any idea about working together on using privacy tech, we can work together. We conduct a good amount of research as well. So if anybody is willing to do research, very open to do research as well. Ultimately, yeah, the goal is to enable proper collaboration in the space.
Thanks, Jay. So we
Thank you
are
very much.
open up for question and answers. Please use the chat option or the Q&A section to put up your questions. We'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes there, and then maybe we can connect you separately if there are some people who want to have some one-on-one interaction with you. I think really important technology, especially from consumer and the institutional perspective, because as a consumer myself, I also always had this thought that who is controlling when I share my data, there is no control. I don't have that. It is like black box. I can't see
Hmm.
how this has been used. And such technologies are there which can prevent that. And eventually we are moving to a era where customer also need to know what how their data is protected. With Data
Correct. Yeah.
Protection Act coming in, it will become more strong. Also, fair use of AI is equivalent important from a institution perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure such technologies adoption will be uh, very quite frequent. And we have one question from Geeta. Geeta, Aniket, can you bring Geeta here? Aniket, you're there? Yeah, Geeta, yeah, you can unmute.
Yeah, hi Abhishek. Thank you for running this session. Very interesting one. And I had one question to Jay. He did mention about auditability because it is under three different components. Now, how this you're imagining at the level of the entity, how can we ensure that there is auditability for even the customer? Would that be something that, yeah.
Right. So when I say auditability, what I mean is that only that functions will run on your data. Let's say, take example of bank statement. A network, as in talk, one can only compute consented functions. Currently, you give access to the whole bank statement in plain text, right? Auditability here means that I will know when I choose in my UI that you are taking consent for calculating average debit, average credit, or providing me lending opportunities. So only those functions are allowed. Nothing else can be done, and there's a log around it. So that will provide auditability. And if somebody wants to build a telemetry, they can build a telemetry dashboard where I can go and log in and see whatever happened with my data. Every single API hit on my data will be recorded.
Okay, that is something the FIU will be able to give full disclosure to their customers. post they've taken the data. So
Right.
if they want to, they can give the dashboard to the customer. That's the understanding.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And even if they don't want to, then also it's fine that there's a cryptographic guarantee that nothing bad is happening.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So Jay, Geeta is from Sehmati and she manages our fair use of Account
But
Aggregator.
yeah,
Do that role.
yeah, fair use is a perfect complement to what we are talking today.
Right. So Geeta,
There's a
you have any other
question.
question to ask, or we can go to?
Yeah, we can go on to Saurabh. Yeah.
ठीक है. तो अनिकेत हरीश को लेके आ सकते हो क्या?
Yeah, sure. There's an interesting question from Abhijit as well. Okay.
Saurav is on stage.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. So this is Saurabh. My question is related to the same question which Geeta had, and so further to that. So once, let's say, someone has consented to an average balance computation or sharing of bank statement data for 3 months, and let's say at the end of 2 months they want to revoke it. So how does it ensure that the data is encrypted or decrypted or something happens so that there's no data transfer happening on the other side?
Okay. Yeah, I think Harish also asked something similar. So first thing we have to note that data never actually moved to, let's say, one FIU. FIU as an entity has no visibility of the data. Data is split between a network, and who will control that network? That's a different story. But data is sharded in a three-entity network. FIU can just pass the respective API hits for computation through TSPs or directly. So the fear of having data being misused or what happens if I revoke my consent, that does not exist because it was never ever in one place, first of all. So now Harish is asking how you will revoke consent. Yeah, so revocation is a compute function in itself. So there is a policy manager here, which I did not show in the diagram for simplicity, but the other policy manager orchestrate the network running, and it will remove the consented and signed opcode once you revoke. So from next onwards, if you provide an API hit for calculating average balance, it won't run because there is no signed artifact for that particular uses. And so that way you revoke the consent. So that's happening to the policy manager in between.
So that's for the compute, right? But what if it's a 3-month bank statement which has to be submitted? That data has already traveled, right?
3-month bank. Can you elaborate a bit more? What do you mean by already submitted?
So let's say the requirement is, well, average balance is the compute, but let's say typically you apply to a loan, there's a 6 months bank statement. Today, let's say I'm trying to compare the transaction here. Today we download PDF statements from the bank and we kind of upload it wherever it has to go, right?
Right,
Now,
correct,
in
right,
this
right.
scenario, if the loan application requires 6 months bank statement, saving statement, right? And out of two accounts which I may have or the user may have, they select one account and they say, okay, approve, right? So what happens? I mean, is that so now if that data is across three entities, so but
Good
still it
question.
gets
Okay.
together and goes to the other side, right?
No, it does not. So yeah, okay, now I understood the question. So once you upload your bank statement through any interface, right? Now that bank statement in an encrypted manner will be sharded on three nodes. And we have to understand that we are not just uploading bank statement and getting a loan. Somebody is processing something on that bank statement, right? So that processing thing is now compute unit, and that will be an API hit on this network. And okay, compute this and create my score, my probability of my returning the loan back or something, whatever they want to build. So and then they will get corresponding insights. So I, as a loan provider, I don't need to see the bank statement completely. I need to perform some certain insights, certain computation, and that computation can be now be given as an API hit to the network, which has sharded data.
Right. Okay,
And
but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I get the idea, but it's like changing mindsets, and they're like, well, let me have the data, and yes, I am happy with the computation, but for 10, 15, 20 odd years, I've always been used to getting data, and I have an in-house team who does whatever processing, right?
Oh, correct, correct.
So
So there's a friction. There's a
I know
friction,
it.
definitely,
Yeah.
which
So
will probably slowly we will adapt.
right, and I just want to take a minute just to summarize. I hope I'm not eating into someone else's time. So the way I understood is, consented to the data gets distributed across three nodes. Whenever the API hits, it checks for this consent to be active. And let's say if the user has revoked the consent becomes inactive, so the call does not go forward. It terminates there. Is that decent summary of how we
Yeah,
understand the whole thing?
yeah, correct. It's a decent
Okay.
summary. Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And if I have to talk about my problem solution in a bit detail, would I reach out to you sometime later or
Yeah, you
through
can
the
you can
that's what you
directly
would
reach
need?
out to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Or yeah,
Okay.
depends on how we
Okay.
want to.
Thank you.
So we will be arranging some one-on-one session. If you would be available, we'll have some sessions. We'll take 3-4 slots from you, 20-minute slots maybe.
Sure, sure.
We'll communicate it to the team. Yeah.
Right. Because our solution is distributed credit scoring, right? So compared to the traditional ones, and that is where we want to use the account aggregator model. So your scenario of data plus compute plus monitoring exactly fits into our domain. That's why I asked a few extra questions.
Interesting.
So can we bring in Aniket, Abhijit?
They will have to raise their hands if they want to join the stage. Otherwise, we can just read out the question.
Okay. So Jay, can you just take those questions?
Yeah. So Abhijit is asking, even if multi-party compute is enabled on FIU sides, is not it possible that FIU can still use the sharded and encrypted data for purpose Z instead of only F? Assume we have X1, X2, and X3. And distributed encrypted data points, can we company still produce Z instead of no? Because there's a link between consent, so you can't run any arbitrary function. Which I think was answered before. Avijit has second question. In case these compute units are on the network instead of FIU, who controls these compute units? In case we only allow a subset of possible function or algorithm which can be applied on the data, would not kill the innovation. Right. So this compute units has a choice. It can be either by FIU or in general architecture. When we are not talking about, let's say, there is an orchestrator which run these orchestration between different computing nodes. So they control the compute units. They control what has to be deployed.
Okay. Sorry, you are raising your hand again. Is it by mistake?
No, it's just a follow up on that. So we can submit compute functions, right? And does someone evaluate them saying, yes, this can go on the network, but this cannot go?
Hmm. Yeah, you are correct.
Oh,
Harish is asking who governs and manages the record retention policy and data custodian. What is record retention policy? Sorry, I'm not aware about it.
so generally the regulator, I think he's talking about the regulatory requirement for the database. So generally RBI asks for maintain the data for 6 years or 7 years, even after the law.
Right. Yeah, so they can keep they can keep that encrypted data with them.
Yeah, Vijit is there, I think. So Vijit, you are open to, and you can unmute yourself if you want, if you have any question.
Just wanted, am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, order.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, like, if only a subset of algorithms are actually allowed to be run using opcodes or perhaps some other systems, wouldn't it stifle innovation in the sector? Let's say I'm a credit analysis company, and I would like to, use some maybe machine learning algorithms on the data. That those opcodes are not actually in the ecosystem itself. I'll have to. Uh, it will just stifle innovation on that particular side of things.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So when I say opcodes, I meant consented opcodes. So if you and your collaborator or your data partner, they agree on a sequence of opcodes, they can run any arbitrary computation. So there's a compiler in between. You write a code in Python, any random function, the compiler converts into opcodes and then deploys. So opcodes are not limited. What I meant was only consented opcodes are allowed to run. So if two or more parties agree that they want to run some function, it's fine. They can run whatever they want. They just need to sign the script.
Yeah, I understand that part. So, like, just reiterate or perhaps add something to that. So, it means currently the FIU can have anything running on the data. They can do whatever they want. But in this kind of a model, until there's an agreement between the FIU and FIP that only these things can be done on the data that is shared, only those will be able to, like, the FIU will be able to only proceed with those things only. They cannot do anything else on the data itself.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about possibilities here. Yeah, there are certain things are possible without affecting the protocol, or in general, there are opportunities to implement something similar in health and many other domains or other financial operations where consented data flow happens.
So any other question, or how does a TSP survive in this setup?
TSPs will become ultimately TSPs. The IP of TSP is their processing ability, right?
I
Am
mean,
I
it was
correct?
my question. Yeah, this is sort of my question. Just to elaborate, I mean, I've known the AA for quite some time, but every time I've gone up to someone, the first question they ask is, "Are you FIU? Are you registered? Are you this?" And that's it. As a TSP, it's like nearly impossible to tell someone that you can be part of the AA framework or the setup and do something. So that's where I'm trying to evaluate that can a TSP really survive? I mean, it's out there, but does it really work?
Yeah, probably I'm not the best person to answer this.
But sort of generally,
Yeah,
what we've seen is that um, so TSPs for the AA framework, at least, while we have been interacting with many FIUs, so they have some of the other TSP partners, and TSPs has to develop some of the USPs which the financial institute should see value in it so that they adopt it. So there are multiple pain points, and I don't think so that uh,
This is just Abhishek, just to sorry interrupting. This is just an decryption part, right? उसके बाद तो बहुत सारा काम है for
हाँ,
TSPs.
agreed. So काफी काम है. I think uh, that is where you have to see what are the opportunities coming in, and with new development, how you can actually uh, go into a new frame of what is happening and
right,
what is required.
right. Because for our model, I mean, it's there. We have talked to a lot of these lending partners and people who do lending, but they are like, you will not be able to get the data, right? So there's no point discussing collaborations, right? So we're kind of stuck there. So we will talk separately and
So
see
you
if
can
that is.
maybe have we can connect separately
Yeah,
and
yeah,
have a
yeah.
discussion on
Sure.
it.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I have there as admin to the group. If you are there, you just ping me. Happy
Sure,
to
sure.
discuss.
Thank you.
Okay, by this, I think we are nearer to the end of the session. I think, Jay, it was very interesting session. Really, there are lot many questions, and it clarified, give me at least a clean idea of what are the possibilities, ensuring customer privacy. So thank you everyone for joining in. And I'll request
No, thank
everyone
you very much.
to be there on the WhatsApp group, and we'll try to get some time from Jay to have one-on-one session. So Jay, I'll reach out to you separately. It will
Yeah,
really
sure.
make sense. It will really help the teams to build something on this, what you have been doing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and thank you very much. Yeah, I love the questions. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.